I'm really excited about the panel. We've been trying to do a social media panel for quite some time. I know a lot of you do social, or you're interested, or it affects your job in some way, or you have your own project, and you're trying to figure out how to leverage social, to make your own thing work, whether you're an actress or musician, or have your own company, or you manage people, or whatever it is. And honestly, it's just really good just professionally. Like, I use my own Twitter just to sort of, sounds ridiculous, to brand myself within my peer group, so they know what I do, and I'm not just sort of this nameless, famous person in the crowd. I'll introduce the panel, and we're going to do a little, Q&A between the few of us, and then I'm going to mostly open it up for your questions. So don't be shy. We have Randall Oral and Kim Taylor. I'll start with Renda. The reason I chose these two in particular is because they're both really skilled at social. They're two of the smartest people, not just women, but two of the smartest people I know who are doing social and digital marketing. But they do it from very different standpoints. So Renda is, she works mostly on the artist side. She does social for artists and labels and actual creative types. And Kim has a very, very strong background in the music industry. She'll go through that. So she's worked a lot on the music side of things, but she's actually flipped towards brands. So she brings all of that, that music sensibility and the way that we deal with our artists and our projects and our labels. She brings that sensibility to her brands. But they do their social in different ways because of that, for very specific reasons. So I thought it'd be a good balance, since a lot of you have creative projects and you also have straight up companies. So Renda, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I thought you were going to introduce me.
I just did.
I was like, are you going to introduce me?
I'm not going to restate your resume.
My name's Randall Oral, and I have pretty extensive music business background. My first job, mostly in the label system, just to give you a little background. My first job was in early 90s with Virgin, and then I worked at MCA and Sony and went through the label system, always in A&R or management. And in 2005, I transitioned into interactive marketing, trying to get the hell out of the music business, and learned about the startup culture. I'm really interested in technology and music platforms. And then the music business dragged me back in a couple of years ago, and I took over all the social media and online marketing for the Smashing Pumpkins for 2 years, and I worked with the resurgence of the Afghan Wigs for 2 years, a year and a half now, and then most recently I've been working with Public Enemy and Chuck D, and I just signed Johnny Lang. So basically, it grabbed me and dragged me back in. So I come from really from working with the artists mostly.
Great, and I guess we have a connecting point, Virgin, the brand. Most of you, many of you in this room actually know me from having been a music journalist for many years, and then I went to work for Virgin Entertainment and launched their virginmegamagazine.com, and did that for 4 or 5 years, and then I flipped back out into digital agencies and started working for bigger brands like Nestle. I've been a digital marketing manager for Red Bull in culture. Just the past few days, I've been on the E3 floor with Disney. They're launching Disney Infinity, which is the biggest game they've ever done. So that's what I do, and so many other. Samsung, I recently helped launch the Samsung Galaxy S3, which was the phone that went up against the iPhone. So I was a digital social media strategist on that launch. And that's where I came from. And I'm sort of a serial dater in social media. I will take on any project that is interesting, that I can learn something from, that I feel like I can bring something to the table. That might be a tech startup in San Francisco. It might be a major brand. It might be a small restaurant that I love in LA, Beechwood Cafe. I just did their social media launch. Or it might be a CPG drinks company that I have a lot of background in.
I like that, serial dater.
Yeah, I am.
It's way better than consultant.
Serial dater that's been married 13 years.
So I think the one thing that people most get struck with when they start thinking about their social media strategy is, which platform do I go with and how do I know? Because there's always more being added. And I know just with me, I have a few that I keep up, pretty regularly. And then there's another one everyone's excited about. I kind of roll my eyes and go, God, I don't have time for this. Seriously? Like, is it really worth my time? Do I really need to have a Pinterest page? Does anybody really care about, and what is that going to be about? So when you have a new project, how do you decide which, both of you, how do you decide which of the various platforms are going to be important and worth your time?
Sure. I come at it from more of a strategic, because I have a brand brain as well. I come at it from a strategic angle. So I will go in and do a social media audit, even if you're a very small company, and I will look at what you're doing now, where the conversations are, and look at what your goals are and where you want to be, and then come back in, and then I'll make a recommendation based on that audit of where I think you should be. And I think the same can apply as an individual too. If you are in digital marketing, where LinkedIn clearly is going to be your biggest one. Maybe you want to be in Quora. I think that you need to look at your own goals and kind of back into it. Like, what do you want to achieve with social media, either in your business or as an individual, and then decide which of those channels will help you get there the quickest.
I do the exact same thing. I do a social media audit as well. And then an added thing that I do is I watch my artist fans and know where they are. Because, there's no point in being on Pinterest if you're Chuck D. I mean, it doesn't make sense. So, and he tweets like 500,000 times a day. So, luckily he says good things. But it's really looking at the audience, looking where they are, and I really like to do, when I do specific campaigns, I do a lot of cross-platform marketing. So I'll take something from Pinterest, say, or Instagram, and make sure it gets on Pinterest and Facebook. So I do a lot of cross-marketing, and in that case, it's usually specific to a marketing campaign.
What would be an example of a campaign where if you could just illustrate the point for us, like what have you done for a campaign that's cross-platforms?
Well, I did a campaign last year called Imagine Oceana, where it was for the Smashing Pumpkins, and they didn't want anyone to hear the music at all until after pre-release even. I mean, it was just crazy. And so I took, the song titles were pretty interesting, so I had all the fans create art based on those song titles. And they could either post it on Instagram. I had them doing it on DeviantArt, and then what I would do is, or my team would do, was basically use the screen grab system, and we would post everything that was on Instagram on a Facebook album, and then we'd also put it on Pinterest, and then we'd tweet out like the fan of the day, and it just went to every single. It looked like it was 100 times more content than it actually was, because we put the content everywhere. Mm-hmm.
I remember that campaign. It was really, really good.
Thank you.
Awesome. So, and I think to your point of talking about like seeing where the fans are, I think that is what happened in marketing, and even digital marketing. The paradigm shift came when it's no longer like deciding that you have something awesome and you want to tell the world about it. It's now you will go into channels and you will analyze, you'll figure out where people that might be interested in what you're doing are, and you will honor those conversations and try and get in on the conversations that are already happening. So that's what I love about social media, because it speaks to that paradigm shift, and it's about a community and a two-way conversation. It's not about shouting to someone about how great your brand is.
It's also being authentic in that same process.
Absolutely.
I noticed between Facebook and Twitter, they're obviously the two largest platforms, are slightly different in what they do. But I've noticed that, especially with artists, they'll have like exponentially more Twitter followers than they will Facebook followers sometimes. And I'm wondering, do you think that's because a Facebook like is harder to game and a Twitter follow is easier to game? Like there's more, like I have bots following me, I'm not even a celebrity. Do you think that's what it is, or do you think that people are just more Twittery than they are Facebooky? What do you think?
I personally think that most of us know that the Facebook pages are managed by somebody else, and that Twitter, you have a little bit more direct access. Okay. And then if you have to add Instagram to the three now. You have to. So the big four, the Fab Four: Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, which we always forget about, and Instagram. And I find from an artist standpoint, and so this works for big artists and baby artists that I sometimes consult with, they love Instagram because they don't have to say anything, so.
That's a good point.
And you can push it straight to Twitter, so that makes it easy. As far as Facebook and Twitter, this is actually a little insider. When I was at Red Bull, the big battle I had with a lot of the people that had been there for a long time is I believe that musicians and artists are more tied into Twitter than they were Facebook. But there was a lot of interesting relationships between Facebook and Red Bull. Go to their likes and you'll figure that one out. But anyway, so I think that Twitter is just a very natural channel for fans and DJs and rap artists and bands, and because there's a direct communication. And I think that it's no accident that the huge EDM artists are Steve Aoki, Deadmau5, Skrillex. They all do their own Twitter. They're on it all the time. They give a behind-the-scenes look at who they are, what they're doing, and their fans are just avid. And I think that Twitter is key. Any band or artist that does not see that as a huge vehicle for their career is missing a great opportunity.
If I can get an artist of any level, because you got the big artists that are like, I'm too cool to do this, and then you've got the baby artists that are like, I don't know what to do, and they freak out. So what I like to do is tell them, pick one. Usually it's Instagram or Twitter. Pick one, you manage that, and because you got to have some authenticity, and then I'll take that content and put it everywhere else. Mm-hmm. And I think just by the pure nature of Facebook, you have a post. How many artists go back in and talk to people in those posts? It's just the pure nature of the platform user experience. So it's automatically, Twitter's more of a conversation. It's more of a natural place to have those conversations and connections, as opposed to Facebook is a lot more like informational, especially now, I think.
With all the new platforms popping up, which do you think has the most potential to really make it like on the level of a Twitter? I mean, do you think Vine is going to be anything? Do you think Feed is going to be anything? Do you think Your Turn's going to be anything?
I don't think we know yet. I think Facebook is still what we've got to communicate with our friends and family. The fastest growing channel of last year was Twitter in the last quarter of last year. If you're in the interior design business, House is a channel that's phenomenal and huge, and you can get a lot more traction there.
What does House do?
House House puts together contractors, designers. It was started by some women in Marin County that were redoing their kitchen, or a couple, and and somebody had connections to Silicon Valley, so they got so much traction on this site, and then they got a bunch of funding, and now it's phenomenally huge in that world. So I had a design client recently that I could get no traction on Facebook because it was so saturated. And then I went to House, and it's just, they've gotten
So do you think special interest groups are the next trend then? Niche?
Niche community, or niche channels? Right. Possibly.
Or I hear a lot about everything's going visual, like Instagram is so huge. Because, we post photos, and so we have cameras on our phones, obviously. Everything we do is a comment on a photo, or it's a photo. There aren't that many just straight, text communications anymore.
Kind of aligns with the lack of educational funding, doesn't it?